All right, today we're going to be talking about the distributive property, and we're going to be talking about the distributive property with multiplication and division. So if you've heard of the distributive property before, the word distribute means to give one to each. Like if I handed out a paper to everybody in this class, I would be distributing the stack of papers, giving one paper to each of you. So in math, it means that if we have a number sitting outside parentheses, and we know that if there's not a symbol there, it means multiply, we're going to take that number and multiply it by each thing in parentheses. So that would be like A times B plus A times C, because we're multiplying the A times the B and the A times the C. So in words, it means this: to multiply a sum or difference by a number, you're going to multiply each term inside parentheses by the number that's outside parentheses. All right, so let's first try solving these two examples using the order of operations, so not using the distributive property. The idea here is we're going to prove that the distributive property works. So if I were going to follow the order of operations, I would do parentheses first to get an 8 here, and then I would do 4 times 8 to get 32. If I did the same problem right here using the distributive property, I would multiply 4 times 6 and add that to 4 times 2. So 4 times 6 we know is 24, and 4 times 2 is 8. 24 plus 8 is also 32, so we can see it works because we got the same answer. Let's try that over here. Using the order of operations, 8 minus 5 is 3, and 3 times 2 is 6. Using the distributive property, we'd have 2 times 8, 2 times 5. We would subtract them and get 16 minus 10, which is also 6. So that's doing the same problem, first with the order of operations and then with the distributive property, and our answer should be the same. So now they're going to throw in some variables down here in this bottom section. It says now to simplify using the distributive property, not solve. Up here it said solve, which means we were able to get a final answer. So now we're going to simplify, and we're going to still take that number on the outside of parentheses and multiply it by each of the numbers or variables inside the parentheses. That noise you hear is Lily, the dog, chewing on a pudding cup. And as you know, I don't start the videos over to make them perfect. I press on, so let me grab it from her. Lily, we have that. My goodness. Okay. All right, so we're going to take this 3 that's outside the parentheses and multiply it by each thing in parentheses. So 3 times x, we're just going to write it as 3x. Since we don't know what the x stands for, we can't get an actual number. We're just going to leave it as 3x. And then we're going to do 3 times 8. We can simplify the 3 times 8 to get 24, but once you get to this point, you cannot go any further. This is your answer. 3x plus 24. The reason you can't add them together is because one of those has an x and one of them doesn't. And since we don't know what the x is actually representing, we have no idea what the value of that first term is. So we're going to leave them separate. A common mistake would be to add them together and get something like 27x, but we're not allowed to do that. All right, let's try this one. We're going to do 0.5 times 8x. and 0.5 times 10. So 0.5 times 8x and 0.5 times 10. This first term we can simplify a little bit. We can do 0.5 times 8, which is just like half of 8, so it's 4. We still have that x. We don't know what it represents again, so we just have to leave it as x. And then we have half of 10 is 5. And again, I cannot combine these two terms because one has an x and one doesn't. So this is my final answer. That is simplified. Moving on, I have a negative 5 times 4x and a negative 5 times 3. So negative 5 times 4x and negative 5 times 3. So I can multiply the negative 5 and the 4 to get negative 20. Don't forget your x. And then I have negative 5 times 3, which is negative 15. I would accept this answer. This is correct, negative 20x plus negative 15. But we know that's the same thing as negative 20x minus 15, which is probably the more common, better answer, and the one you would see like in the back of a textbook where they have answers. Sorry that my house is noisy tonight. All right, and the last example, we're doing negative 12 times 3x, and then we can do negative 12 times negative 4. So negative 12 times 3x and negative 12 times negative 4. So that's going to give us negative 36x. Negative 12 times negative 4 is positive 48, and that would be my answer. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, because I know a lot of you ask me this. I thought this was a subtraction sign up here, not a negative. Well, that's fine if you want to think of it that way, because remember, a negative and minus are the same thing. If you want to do it that way, you would have negative 12 times 3x minus negative 12 times 4. So that gives me negative 36, and then minus negative 48. Oops, I forgot the x. And remember what that double negative means. It means add, doesn't it? So we're going to get the same thing. I bet you knew that was going to happen, huh? All right, so that's distributive property with multiplication. Now we're going to talk about the distributive property of division. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Instead of having a number in front of the parentheses, in front of a sum or difference of numbers, now we're going to have a number that we're going to divide that sum or difference by. And the same way distributing means give one to each with multiplication, it means give one to each with division. So I'm going to do A divided by C and then B divided by C separately. In words, to divide a sum or difference by a number, divide each term in the inside. I should say on the inside. By the number in the, that's why it says, don't mind me. I was going to say that's worded very strangely. Divide each term in the numerator. That makes more sense. I was thinking of multiplication again by the number in the denominator. And just like we did with the multiplication, we're going to show why this works with order of operations first and then with the distributive properties. So if we were following the order of operations, we would do the sum in the numerator first, and then we would divide. To do that with the distributive property, I would take the 2 and divide each term by that 2. If I did that separately, I would get 7 plus 3, which is, guess what? Also 10. So it works with the order of operations and it works with the distributive property. So up here, negative 21, if you can't remember how to do that, we've got 28 positives, 21 negatives, so the positives would win by 7 points, and 7 divided by 7 is 1. If I use the distributive property, I would divide both of these by 7. And that would give me negative 3. Uh-oh. Don't know why I wrote 4 there. Oh, I know why, because I was skipping ahead. Negative 3 plus 4 is also 1. All right, so let's see what happens then when I throw in some variables. I'm going to divide each of these terms by 4. So I'll have 12x divided by 4 and 60 divided by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, don't forget the x, and 60 divided by 4 is 15. And just like on the other side of the notes, we cannot combine these terms because one has an x and one doesn't. So here I'm going to divide both of these by 1.7. So I have 3.4k divided by 1.7. And then here's my negative, or my subtraction, 8.5 divided by 1.7. So 1.7 goes into 3.4 twice, don't forget the k. And 1.7 goes into 8.5 5 times. That's my answer. I cannot combine something with a variable and something without a variable. And last two examples here. Going to divide both of these by 25. So I have 125w divided by 25. Subtract, or you can put that minus up with the 75. It's up to you. 25 goes into 125 5 times, and 25 goes into 75 3 times. And I'll leave my answer like that. Lastly, I have x divided by 12 and 144 divided by 12. Now, there's not a coefficient or a number in front of the variable here, so we can just leave this as x over 12. 144 divided by 12 is 12. Or I could do 1/12 times x plus 1 plus 12. Either one of these would be considered correct, because if you divide something by 12, that's the same as saying 1/12 of that number. All right, so that is the notes for distributive property. I'm going to stop there and do a separate video going through these practice problems so that the video doesn't get too long. Thanks for watching.